Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We'll now call the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 15th, 2021 to order. Are there any late additions or deletions?
Mr. Mayor, there is a late addition to the item, to the agenda. We're going to add a closed session under the community charter as item 4.0 and then move all of the other items down. So reports and presentations from staff will become item 5 and so on.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have that. Any other additions or deletions? Hearing none, then I require someone that the March 15th, 2021 Committee of the Whole agenda be adopted as amended. Councillor Howe, second Councillor Wiebe. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'd like to welcome Ms. Peters as delegation.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. You may turn on your camera and microphone.
Okay, I've done that. So I'm presuming I can go ahead and start then. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Last week was International Women's Day and Stop the Sexual Exploitation of Children and Youth Awareness Week. This week, down here anyways, in Vancouver area is spring break for our youth. I recently launched the Be Amazing Stop Sexual Exploitation campaign. So I've got a button here that says Be Amazing. I've got a bumper sticker. I have a pamphlet and I have a brand new website called www.beamazingcampaign.org. The teaching videos on page 2, and here I'm just going to hold this up so you can see. There's my website. On the website, we're videotaped by the RCMP, so the 2 teaching videos are particularly valuable. Human sex trafficking and sexual exploitation for the purpose of prostitution is the fastest growing crime in the world, and it is here in BC. So what is human trafficking? It's recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercising control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. The key word is exploitation. This is modern day slavery. So here are some stats. 13 years old is the average age of recruitment into the sex industry. Much, much younger for Indigenous girls. In Surrey and Vancouver, the target age now is 10 to 12-year-old girls. That's grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. COVID has made this much worse. Traffickers are now very organized and sophisticated. 54% in the sex industry are Indigenous. They are severely overrepresented in the sex industry. 82%, and this is shocking, that are involved in prostitution, had childhood sexual abuse and incest, which is preparation for prostitution later on. 72% live with PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, so trauma has to be addressed. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice. It is not a job. 86% have housing needs. Homelessness makes them vulnerable. 82% need drug rehabilitation because drugs and the sex industry go together hand in hand. So I've been raising awareness about sexual exploitation and specifically child sexual exploitation and trafficking to every city council, MLA, and MP and police agency in BC since the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act, there it is, there's the name of it, became federal law in 2014. I've been raising awareness about this law so the police would enforce it, so the public would understand it and be able to report it. So the law has 3 parts. Number 1, it targets the demand by targeting the buyer of sex. The predator, trafficker, pimp, facilitator, John, the buyer of sex is criminalized. Number 2, it recognizes that the seller of sex is a victim, usually female, and is not criminalized. Number 3, there's exit strategies put in place to assist the victim out of the sex trade. We're not doing any of those things very well here in BC. This law focuses on the source of the harm, the buyers of sex and the profiteers. The clear statement from Parliament was that girls and women in Canada are not for sale. Here's my RCMP poster, that they are full human beings with dignity and human rights. Vancouver and Toronto are global sex tourism hotspots. Canada now is known as a child sex tourism destination. Council has received my handouts. Those handouts are a good start to address human sex trafficking. My website also has very helpful information. So the global sex trade is moving fast and it's growing fast. It's targeting our children because children is where the money is. It's fueled by the internet where most of the luring is taking place. Contributing factors to a growing sex industry is, and here they are, globalization, unregulated technology, no surprise, limited law enforcement, they just don't have the funding or the training, and very little prevention education. So I do the prevention education. Canada has a brand new national human trafficking hotline number. Here's the number. I sent it to a wallet card to you. It's 1-833-900-1010. Also provincially, OCTIP has a helpline and so does Victim Link. Pornography is fueling the sex industry and creating the market for commercially paid sex. Men and boys are the buyers of sex and are the key to end exploitation. Our men and boys, and I got this line from the Vancouver Police Department, must understand that there's a sacred part of the woman they have no right to. So what can you do in Lillooet? Train your business licensing managers what to look for when granting business licenses. You have control over the type of business activity in Lillooet. For example, unregistered massage and body rub parlors, nail spas, holistic health centers, day spas, modeling agencies, tattoo parlors, escort services, cheap bars and hotels, men's clubs, Airbnb, VRBO, casinos, strip clubs, organized crime clubhouses can be typical covers for sex trafficking and exploitation. Regarding hotels and motels in Ontario, in an effort to curb trafficking, they are mandating the registration of every guest who is in and paying for a room. That could be a consideration for BC. Council needs to be aware of this growing crime because no community is immune. Before COVID, my presentations were all in the Lower Mainland, but now with COVID, I can present to communities all over BC. BC is getting further and further behind every province in Canada in both enforcing the law, the federal law, and in raising awareness with prevention education. Therefore, BC and the Lower Mainland is the best place in Canada to buy and sell women and children for sex. Public awareness in BC is completely lacking. The media has typically a one-sided pro-sex industry narrative, making it very difficult for somebody like me to counter. That is why I have sent information packages to every city council in BC, and I'm doing the same thing now for every MLA to warn you all of this rapidly growing crime. So I have a number of asks, I have 3 asks. Could I present to your school board, to any youth workers, community support workers, and to your Indigenous bands and leaders? Number 2, could you alert the Premier and Solicitor General that this crime is a priority in BC and ask for funding for provincial law enforcement, and we need a provincial public awareness campaign. BC also needs, and this is long, an interagency human sex trafficking task force similar to what we have available for drugs and gangs. Could you write me a letter of support? And my big dream is to have a provincial roundtable to come up with strategies to stop sexual exploitation. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope there's some questions.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. You certainly have presented quite an impact, especially from me personally. I had no idea that Canada was becoming the child sex tourism destination. We automatically assumed that those things were happening on the other side of the world, Asia and the like, and that we kind of get comfortable in our own tiny spot here. And I think obviously from the sounds of it, the drugs and fentanyl and the like can play a major role here. And there's no community, no matter how large and certainly no matter how small, that is not impacted by that. You've done really well in terms of the present, because I was starting to say, okay, what are you asking? Well, you told us, and basically, to me, it's an eye opener, and I'm sure council members will have some questions as well. I noticed that you make mention of Airbnb, and I think that's something that we as a community must look into to assure that we don't fall into this particular type of trap, and also to support you, at least from myself as mayor, in terms of gaining both the provincial and the federal government in terms of assuring that we have the resources placed. And I think you've adeptly outlined that. Thank you very much for this. I found it very, very meaningful, and certainly will see amongst council as well as our staff the public awareness that we can, the role that we can play here in our community. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Wiebe.
Yes, I'm curious when you say it's become more rampant with the pandemic. Is that because of more drug use, the solitude, or the going underground, or all of the above? If you could.
All of the above. All of the above. But I want to be really clear, the sex traffickers are really, really organized now. And during COVID, they're taking full advantage. Most of the luring occurs online. So it's Snapchat, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's video games. The traffickers are all luring there. They're very good. They're professional at what they're doing. The commercial sex industry in Vancouver is undeterred, and it's growing hugely. So the traffickers have got to get supply. So they are scouring every corner of BC and up north to get the supply. And it's underage, and they're really going after the Indigenous. And I know you've got a large Indigenous population. They are very, very vulnerable. Without education, they're going to be sucked into this.
Good point. Thank you. Councillor Hoppel.
Well, thank you for everything that you do. Oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine. My question is, I know of two people that had close people to them end up in the sex trade. One made it home safely to Alberta, and the other one was from Kamloops, and that was Jessie Foster, and she was never seen again. So my question is, because both of them went into the sex trafficking, got lured in Las Vegas.
We're having a problem with freezing here with some of the, just be patient, everyone. You're back again, Councillor Hoppel.
Oh, okay. Where did I get to? So I was just going to say, like, when we go down to Las Vegas, being that I know that two people got lured away in Las Vegas, you're walking down the street and they give you these cards and pictures of these women and their, so-called names. But are those pictures not in a database somewhere that we could, because I look at them and there's so many girls and some young boys, and I think, why can't I take these home and put them in some sort of database for those parents that must be, like, does that exist?
Oh, that's such a good question. In the States, that kind of thing exists. We are 40 years behind the States. In BC, we are 30 years behind Ontario and Manitoba, 20 years behind Alberta. We don't have data collection for much of anything in Canada. It costs money to collect data, so we just don't have that. In terms of Las Vegas, actually, it's illegal. Prostitution is illegal in the city of Las Vegas, but everybody turns a blind eye. It's just a few counties in Nevada, but Nevada, there you have the sex industry really thriving. It's robust. It's expected. Nevada is what I don't want BC to become. I don't want that. There's a country, New Zealand has now fully decriminalized prostitution by one vote, and that country's completely changed. I was down there a few years ago, and I just couldn't believe it. It was just, the sex industry was in your face. Now, in the brothels there, who fills them? Who's in the supply? It's the Southeast Asians that they bring by container ship. It's the Indigenous, the Maori, and it's children. it will be children. And the sex industry here in Vancouver, in the Lower Mainland, is pushing for the repeal of that law I described. They want to open the floodgates to the sex industry. And that is why I'm working on this full time. I don't want that to happen. But the public in BC have no clue. We just don't have the public awareness. And I have a real problem with media. I phone them all the time to say, can't you do prevention, education, a piece on this? I mean, Jessie Foster, I know Jessie Foster's mother.
So why?
You know, I mean, this has to stop. I present now to the Indigenous women. I'm doing a presentation next week. I present to the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls gatherings. I just presented to all the BC Indigenous chiefs and to the Federal Justice Minister, David Lametti. This has to stop. In the sex industry, if they had their way, they would open the floodgates so that the sex industry is normalized, like it is in Nevada, like it is New Zealand, like it is in Thailand and Germany and the Netherlands. We don't want this in this country. And BC is the problem right now. We are so far behind.
Can I ask one more question? Have you gone to the school districts?
I am so full. I've been doing this for 7 solid years full time. I've been working on this for 40 years. So I'm an inner city high school teacher. So I worked on it way back then. So I've been doing this full time, just trying to reach every member of parliament, every MLA, every city council, and I train and work with every police agency. That's been full time for me. But if you can introduce me to school boards, make that connection, I'm happy to start doing that. I need to be asked, because right now my phone is ringing off the hook just to present to the Indigenous and city councils. But I will present to any group that you can introduce me to, and I do this for free. I'm a private citizen doing this on my own. I say to the Indigenous, I'm a mother bear.
Well, thank you very much. And I work with a school board trustee, so I will talk to her tomorrow. But thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Huffel. Councillor Leach is next. Councillor Howe, it's good to have you back. You're after Councillor Leach.
I got some of my questions answered by Councillor Hopwell, so thank you. But also, I just wanted to say, as a mother of a young daughter, this scares the crap out of me. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Councillor Howe.
Hello. Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a really important topic, and I apologize if my questions or comments are going to be redundant. I lost connection for a bit there. This whole thing is horrifying. In anybody going through the material you sent us that didn't feel like they were going to puke after reading it, I have no words for them. I was particularly horrified, but not surprised, to read the statistic you supplied about 95% of sex workers not being there by choice, because I think the public conception is that it's by choice. So what's the problem here? And so I think, yeah, in terms of creating an awareness program to help spread the word that these are women being held against their will. They're being coerced and stolen, and this calling it prostitution instead of what it is, sex trafficking, I think is going to be so very important. And I'm just wondering, because there's another word that people use, escorts. I would assume that the percentage is about the same in terms of escorts that are in service, so to speak. Is that true as well then?
It depends which kind of escorts you're talking about. Usually the escorts are the high-enders. They tend to be the blondes with the blue eyes, and they charge a lot of money. They're the ones that speak on media all the time saying they love this, they chose to do it, it's great money, I'm empowered. They represent 3 to 5% of the sex industry. They do not speak for what I speak for. I speak for the voiceless. I speak for the indigenous. I speak for the vulnerable. I think that LGBTQ, any girl under 14, some boys, migrants, new migrants are being targeted very deliberately, disabled. I mean, it's a whole range now. And of course, pornography is a big part of this. That has, excuse my language, but pornified this younger generation. So they think that's normal. And we've got to get away from this idea that this kind of activity is normal. It's not normal. It's exploitation. And that is the word that I use. It really is modern day slavery. And I just want to say to all of you, I love your small communities, but it's your small communities that the traffickers are trolling. They are going to try to entice your girls, and they'll promise them everything. You know, travel and money and new shoes and everything that they don't get at home in Lillooet, they will be promised. It will be all a lie. And that's why I love to speak to young girls. But the problem is when a girl's 10 years old in grade 4, how can she have any way of making a conscious decision of what she's doing? We really have to train, I would say train parents. Parents are freaked out, and I get it. But what I want to do is empower you. I've been a parent too, 3 children. They're all launched and grown. And we could have lost, you know, one of ours to this as well. So I get that piece, but we have to talk about this stuff because otherwise the sex industry take advantage of us not wanting to know, keeping our heads in the sand. So I want to empower you and encourage you. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And I work with law enforcement. They love me doing this stuff, because I don't have to be politically correct. I can talk to you and tell you what's going on.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Howe, go ahead.
Thank you. I know that, oh, this is just so many questions and things that I have to say. So having read through some of the material, and the stats showing that in North America, it's mostly women and children that are being trafficked for sex. And when we talk about this porn culture, and then as well as the reason for this trafficking being many, like multifaceted, but also really pinpointing the idea of rape culture. Do you find that that is a particular high level reason as to why this is happening in North America, particularly in BC?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it all goes together. The sex industry is multifaceted. I mean, it's huge. It involves webcam sex. It involves pornography. I mean, there's so much to it. But the point is, all I want you to understand is the sex industry want underage. Crime
we have another
follows.
freezing.
Sorry, am I freezing?
Yeah, you're back online now.
Okay, thank you. The point is, crime follows the money. There's so much money in this, okay? And international crime syndicates are involved. And BC, Vancouver is a port city and an entry point into Canada. That's why it's such a hot spot along with Toronto. But at least Toronto, the police are trained and there's public awareness. We have neither here. We don't have either. That's why it's so bad. That's why a city council like you can say to the premier, this has got to end. You've got to do something. And I wouldn't say this government is particularly, I mean, I need to meet them. I can't get to them. I have an NDP MLA. She's met with me, but I have to get to the premier, quite frankly.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from council? Yes, Councillor Howe?
What? I know it's hard to find the real indicate, like the real reason why this industry is growing, but what, like, why? What is it? I mean, it's just it brings in more money for less effort. I don't understand why this is so rapidly growing.
I can make it really simple for you. What I said at the beginning, there's 4 factors. Globalization. The world has become a very small place. Okay. Unregulated technology. Technology is not regulated. There's no regulation. So young people are viewing hardcore pornography on a click on their device. If they have access to the internet, they see this stuff. Then it becomes normalized in their head. Then they're already ready for the sex industry to be groomed and to be lured into it. And the criminals are very, very good at this. Again, children is where the money is. So, and our law enforcement in BC, again, they just haven't had the training and the funding. Now, why? Because politicians have said it's not a priority. It's not a priority. They say to me, what are the stats? What are the numbers? Where's the data? Well, then I found out we don't collect data in Canada. So that's my answer. So much of this is anecdotal, except I've been working on this for 40 years and people can't ignore me anymore.
No, that's true. If I can remind council as well, and I'm sure Ms. Peters would agree, you look at social media and specifically, let's say Twitter or Facebook, they're very quick to regulate wokeness and speech, but they're flagrantly allowing all forms of pornography to continue on. That has to tell you something about it. The other thing I can remind you, just hearken what our new CAO did. If you recall, the Lillooet website, lillooet.ca, took people to a pornographic site. Those are the kind of things that are pervasive. I think, as Ms. Peters points out, they're coming at small communities every which way but loose. But any more comments from council? Ms. Peters, I'd like to thank you. I think that the passion of your presentation certainly has educated and stimulated us, and I can assure you that you shook us and we're awake a little bit, and I'm confident that this council with staff will play a role going forward. Yes, Councillor Hopfull.
Sorry, just one last question. Do you sell your pins? Your paraphernalia that you have to advertise? Can we get them?
Well, I did send my pamphlet in the package, but I can send you, I mean, I just had a few of these made up. I got about 40. I'm happy to send a couple of these up to you and you can get them made up. It just says be amazing. And it's fun because I wear this and everybody stops me and says, be amazing about what? And I go,
Exactly.
Be amazing and stop sexual exploitation. I mean, it really works.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, Ms. Peters. I'm sure you have an ally in us that we will carry this message forward and support you in this very important initiative. Thank you for your personal time in this. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, we'll move on to item 4. I need someone to move that the meeting of the District of Lillooet Committee of the Whole be closed to public pursuant to the Community Charter's provisions, Section 91F, law enforcement, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. Who will so move? Councillor Wiebe, second Councillor Howe. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you.